Other report I just want to highlight before we get into today's dailies, and it's by Obonyo, and he asks a question. So here is the report penned yesterday, for yesterday's publication, I beg your pardon, by Macharia Gaido, the Sabasaba Spirit, as Raila plans demonstrations on July the 7th against the Kenya Kwanza Finance Act 2023. Questions remain about whether he can rekindle the revolutionary moment of the early 90s. And when I flip over a couple of pages over, there's this other story, and this one penned by one Oscar Obonyo. And it states changing course, and that is the course of the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya. A new strategy to create a nationwide movement of change seeks to remove Raila as a face of the opposition. I'm curious what my panelists will make of this. All right, let's get into today's Daily Nation to begin with. And front page, youth exodus. Greener pastures, unemployment and tough living conditions have driven many young people to the edge, and they now want out. The long, winding queues at passport centers across the country, as well as at the airport, a testament to this. The youth are flying out to pursue their dreams abroad, and the government is prodding them on. That is through pages 6 through to 7. Passport delays, a nightmare for many Kenyans seeking to travel out of the country. We have a bit of data on the front page here, and we start with the passport process in crisis. There is currently a backlog of at least 70,000 passports, and the Immigration Department can only process 700 passports a day. Steep increase. Passports processed and issued increased by 55.9% to 426,137 in 2022. U.S. green card official data from the U.S. State Department shows that 173,218 Kenyans applied for the 2021 Diversity Visa Lottery. And foreign jobs, President William Ruto has, quote, secured over 400,000 job opportunities for Kenyans in Germany and Saudi Arabia. Unemployment, over 3.12 million Kenyans were unemployed in 2022. The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics data shows. Speaking of which, there is a KNBS report that is set to be released today. We'll also be keeping an eye on that, in addition to the court ruling on the CASs. Also on the front page of the Daily Nation, something that will inform our conversation inside Ruto's plan to claw into Raila's Nyanza turf. President William Ruto is on an overdrive to make inroads into Azimio leader Raila Odinga's is that better? Yes, Nyanza backyard, and was set to visit the region this Saturday, barely a week after former Premier hosted a two-day mega event to secure his staff. President Ruto was supposed to visit Homa Bay on July the 8th for a Thanksgiving ceremony of Interior Principal Secretary Dr. Raymond Omolo, but the meeting has been postponed to the 15th due to other engagements. He will then return for another meeting in Gem, Siaya County, on August the 5th. So there we have at the front page of the Daily Nation. At the very top here, we are still keeping an eye on the Londiani accident. Traders defy orders to vacate roadside market. And last moments of Kenyan woman who was murdered alongside her Nigerian lover. More on that on page 3 of the Daily Nation. Let's take a look at the Business Daily now. And this is the headline: double blow for motorists as EPRA ignores levy cuts. And this particular report, penned by one Julian Amboko. Kenyans are overpaying Omulo for fuel after the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority failed to effect changes in 2 levies as prescribed by the Finance Act 2023 in its latest review of pump prices. EPRA, in the rush to revise fuel prices to reflect the new taxes, retained the import declaration fee and the railway development levy at the previous rates, in what has seen Kenyans pay illegal levies. The Finance Act of 2023 amended the Miscellaneous Fees and Levies Act of 2016 to reduce IDF from 3.5% to 2.5% and RDL from 2% to 1.5% in what the state termed offsets to help cushion Kenyans from the anticipated rise in the cost of fuel. All right, also on the front page of the Business Daily, SRC to press on with salary review despite Ruto protests. Looks like there's a lot of double speak. And here we have a report penned by Kefa Mwiruri. The first few paragraphs reading, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission will press on with the planned review of salaries for all public sector workers, including state officers, despite public remarks by President William Ruto advising against any increments for the highly paid senior officials. The commission, which is independent of the executive under the Constitution, said it will continue to seek public comments on the proposed review until July the 13th before gazetting the new salary structure for state officers later this month, while advising on adjustments to other public officers. All right, let's take a look at the ticker before we look at Taifa Leo. I cannot wait. Kenya taps 3.4 billion shillings to cover debt repayment shortfalls. Kenya was forced to tap 3.43 billion shillings to cover the budget hole and the foreign debt service obligations created by the depreciation of the shilling against the US dollar in the first half of the financial year 2022-2023. The Auditor General has revealed KQ to ditch Embraer Bombardier jets. KQ is set to do away with Embraer and Bombardier aircraft from its fleet as it opts for Boeing planes as the company adopts mono-fleeting. Mono-fleeting, a cost containment measure, aligns to KQ's focus on optimizing its fleet and network plan. So far, KQ has disclosed the exit of 2 Boeing 737-700s and 2 Embraer E190 jets, and Treasury bills lose shine in government debt mix. The government's share of domestic debt held in Treasury bills has dropped to a new low of 13%, easing refinancing concerns in the short term for the exchequer amid high debt service obligations. All right, as promised, let's take a look at the Taifa Leo next. And this is the headline. Ruto akata Raila miguu, awalinda na kuwatumia waasi wa Odinga katika Luo Nyanza, azidisha umaarufu wa UDA katika ukanda huo na kupanga ziara kadhaa za kuwashawishi wakazi kumuunga mkono. I believe this is the same story I read. Stop laughing. Amulo, seriously. It's the same story I read on the front page of the Daily Nation. President William Ruto making inroads in Nyanza again informs the topic of conversation this morning. Rais apanga mikakati kabambe ya kufifisha ushawishi wa kinara wa Azimio katika ngome yake ya Luo Nyanza. So that is the front page. Let's take a look at what else is here. Vidokezo. Shibe kwa wadosi raia wakimeza mate. Viongozi wakuu wakisubiri nyongeza nono ya ujira. Wa Kenya wahangaika na deni la Kenya lapita kiwango cha trilioni 10. Shilingi trilioni 10. Serikali ya Kenya kwanza yavuka mpaka wa ukopaji uliowekwa bunge kwa kufikisha jumia ya trilioni 10. All right, let's take a look at the Standard. Intrigues of missing school reform report. Task Force on Education Reforms was to hand over its final report 3 weeks ago, but promises to make it public have not been met, raising doubts on the recommendations of the 49-member team could have made. Also on the front page here, families come to terms with Londiani tragedy. Truly tragic. And also on the front page of the Standard, fuel prices headache for students and parents. Matatu operators have raised fares after the energy regulator hiked pump prices, spelling doom for parents who have to dig deeper to take students back to school. At the very top here, Malala in cabinet. Little men whose words become law. Interesting read, that looks like. And what next for Mali after UN pullout? All right, that's on the international scene. Kidi, I'm curious, you're usually published on, is it Mondays?
Yes, on Monday, yes.
Okay, we'll take a look at what you have. All right, the Star. Moment of truth for CASs as court rules if struck down decision could worsen setback president has suffered from judiciary, and that follows the suspension of the Finance Act. We will be carrying that judgment live from 9 a.m. immediately following Your World. And at least some happy images on the front page here. Kip Kemboi and Jabet rule Nairobi City Marathon. Congratulations to them. And grey area shock, no records of country's public debt, reveals Auditor General. Shocking indeed. There is no official record of the country's public debt position. Auditor General Nancy Gathungu says there is no financial statement to show the debt position. The status is only included as an annexure in the consolidated fund statement of expenditure, she said. She said no one knows how much loans and overdrafts are held by the national and county governments. Fascinating research this on the front page of the Star. Hot testicles may hold secret to Jumbo's anti-cancer genes. So more on that on page 9 of the Star. Let's quickly take a look at the People Daily before I invite my panelists to weigh in. And actually, we'll just transition into the topic of conversation because the stories I want to look at in the Daily is actually concern what we're discussing this morning. People Daily, Ruto's CASs to know fate today. An image there of William Ruto. Looks like he's in deep... No, he's looking at his watch. Day of judgment. High Court to rule on whether 50 appointees will take up their lucrative jobs or they will be sent packing after LSK and other petitioners questioned the legality of appointments. And holding the sword of justice, Justice Kanye Kimondo, Justice Ongundi Hedwig, Justice Alim Al-Nasir, and also sharing the front page of the People Daily here, pain, tears as Londiani crash victims identified. Of the 52 people killed in one of Kenya's worst accidents this year, relatives have identified 37, but the report filed by Ruth talked of 39. So perhaps at the time they were going to press. Tributes pour in for writer activist Michere, and here Kenya's debt rises to 9.6 trillion in April. Rate of borrowing goes against promises made by Kenya Kwanza that it would reduce appetite for loans. Smiling faces at the very top here. Marathon champions day of glory. Robert Kip Kemboi, 33, and Naomi Jabet, 29, celebrate after winning the men's and women's full marathon respectively. And the details of their time on the front page of the People Daily there. So allow me to introduce. I don't think I've introduced you guys this morning. Omula, I've mentioned you several times, but for those who are not familiar, let me introduce my panelists to you. I tweeted them and uttered them. We have in studio Omulo, Junior Director, Political Affairs, ANC. We have a political analyst sitting next to him, and that is Jim India, no stranger to this set. Good morning and karibu. First time I'm hosting you,
First time,
but I think we met over the election period.
Yes.
Good to see you. Kidi Mwaga, good morning.
Good morning.
And he analyzes governance and issues of policy. He's also a lawyer. Yes. And sitting next to him is an advocate, Suleiman Bashir. Good to see you this morning.
Thank you.
First time I'm hosting you as well.
Yes. All
right, good to have you guys in studio. So, as I said, what we're discussing this morning, we're asking, was Azimio's failure to marshal its troops evidence of disquiet in Azimio's ranks, or was it a vote of no confidence in Raila Odinga's leadership? Is he past his prime? And I ask that because when I look at the weekly review, here we go, this particular report by Oscar Obonyo, and he tells us a new strategy to create a nationwide movement of change seeks to remove Raila as the face of the opposition. But let's first take a look at some of those headlines that I wanted to look at. Kidi, it's usually on page what? The editorial?
Page 16.
Page 16. All right, let's take a look at that before I transition. What is this? This is page 7. So just a couple of more flips. There we go. Here we go. Oh, I'm curious to see what the editorial cartoon is. And here we have Mama Samia, yes, it is. And interesting here, this is a crooked deal. Actually, the East African reads, where is it? Here, EAC wary of EU-Kenya trade deal. Experts say some provisions of the EPA jeopardize the common market at a time Africa is propping up its own free trade area to boost local producers? But Kitty, back to what you've penned and what was published this morning. Ruto is right. Time has come for Africa to chart its own course. All right. In line with what is on the East African as well as that editorial cartoon. All right, gentlemen. Inside Ruto's plan to claw into Raila's Nyanza turf is one of the things I wanted to look at this morning. I saw something similar on the Taifa Leo. And here we go. Ruto akata Raila miguu. Awalinda na kutumia waasi na kuwatumia waasi wa Odinga katika Luo Nyanza, azidisha umaarufu wa UDA katika ukanda huo na kupanga ziara kadhaa za kuwashawishi wakazi kumuunga mkono. What do you make, Omulo Jr.?
First and foremost, good morning, Olive.
Good morning.
And I also wanted to say that the Londiani tragedy is a very sad story. And I also wanted to join Kenyans in sending my condolences to the bereaved family and relatives, and also to urge the government to take seriously the issue of vacating those who are selling beside the road, so that they can get a market or somewhere that is safe, so that we don't repeat such kind of we don't have such kind of accidents. Secondly, as you
it's easier said than done though, Omulo, because the people who have returned to the site say, I mean, you go where the customer is, do you know it?
And that's why it is the responsibility of the county government to organize themselves and take this seriously. Otherwise, we'll continue losing Kenyans because they don't care. People want to make money, and that should not be the case. So we just want to urge the Minister of Transport and even those who are responsible to take this seriously, to implement what they said. Be that as it may, I don't think that there's anything to worry about Ruto visiting Nyanza and any other part of this country. Ruto is the President of the Republic of Kenya. He has a right to visit any part of this country. And I think visiting Nyanza is not new. He had done that before, and I think going to Nyanza on either 17th, 15th, it is not a state visit, but he's going to celebrate with the PS of Interior, who has invited him. But he's yet to organize state visits where he will also promise goodies. Remember, when he went to Nyanza the first time, he was received by members of parliament and even the leadership of Nyanza region. But there was a backlash after the leadership of Azimio came up with some demands, and they failed to recognize the legitimacy of William Ruto. So I think there was a serious delay and backlash in that visit, but he promised a lot of goodies to Nyanza people. And as Nyanza people, those who come from the region, what we want now is development. We are saying that we have come from politics. We no longer need politics. We are not going to practice politics. What we were urging our people and even the Republic of Kenya, the leadership of the Republic of Kenya, is to bring us goodies so that we can create employment, so that we can also get markets for our produce, so that we can also have a conversation on how we can build our counties. Right. Remember, Ruto already has released 399 billion that has gone to counties. So it means that each and every county has an opportunity to build their county. You saw
released,
what happened.
But released when?
But he has done his part. He has done his part.
Not late in the day, not even a bit late in the day. But Jim, let me ask you to come in at this point. Omulo is telling us this is about development, but is he being disingenuous? Is this all about development?
I think we cannot divorce politics from development, at least in Kenya. We cannot say that this is, it's time for us to forget about politics and move on to development. Because at any given time, we need people to continuously keep vigil. We need citizens to continually keep governments accountable. And if that means maandamano is the way to keep a government accountable, then we cannot term that maandamano as politics, but it is a critical process of the development process. When you have a government that, deliberately or is unable to release funds to counties at the right time, then the people have the right to then what some of my friends will call politicking, but they have the right to agitate those governments to then speed up those processes. And so I think Ruto's visit is both political and development, if he wants to call it so. We know that how much development in this country is also very tokenistic. It is a give and take. Anyone who visits a region, they have something at the end. These homecomings that we do all over the place, what is homecoming? Surely, that the day that I get appointed for a position, I go home and call my people and tell them to come celebrate. Homecoming is basically an opportunity to do a political rally in most of these places. It's an opportunity to come and say, look, you people did not vote for me, but I have gone ahead and appointed one of you as one of the most powerful persons in this country. So, tupatane kwa debe 2027. So, ideally, while he is on this trip, trying to build bridges, trying to say, look, I cannot battle out with Raila on the streets. He might have street credits that I do not have, but I can battle with huku chini kwa ground. Because you know that is how Ruto has built his political base. Over time, when he was sidelined, he kept visiting border associations, he kept visiting. He did it, for lack of a better word, the Moi style. How Moi connected with chiefs, how Moi connected when he was vice president, that ultimately when he became president, he had such a strong tentacle spread across the country. And so Ruto is good at that machinery at the village level. And so that is a level that Raila cannot beat him at. So he's basically changing the game and shifting it to the village level. And I think he will win the hearts of the people, because at the end of the day, what people want, credit to Omulo, is they want to see the product of this fight that we've been fighting. This fight that we've had since the 90s, what is the where is the substance? And that is the one thing that perhaps Raila Odinga has not given the people. That, okay, we've fought, we've lost lives, we have lost property. What do we have to show for it?
Okay.
And Ruto is saying, you have PS Omolo to show for it.
Okay. Kini Mwaka is, you know, we saw Raila this last weekend in, was it in Homa Bay? Yes, for the cultural festival. We saw the installation of a new chairman to the Luo
Council of Elders.
Exactly, Ker.
Yeah,
I read something like that. And we also saw him officially open the Raila Odinga Stadium. You know, was this, in your view, an effort to consolidate his base? Has William Ruto eroded? Or essentially, because, okay, and I say this just figuratively speaking, you know, sort of, because Raila has had his, quote, clause in Nyanza. Is this evidence that he has something to worry about now? Is he losing grip?
Raila Odinga has got every reason to worry. One, because there are two activities that have taken place in the last 1 or 2 weeks, politically, which are political, but they're all geared at Raila Odinga trying to re-engineer himself, both as a national leader and as the leader of the Luo community politically. The last rally that Azimio held at Kamukunji, where Baba was, you know, narrating to his audience, the history of second liberation and Sabasaba and everything else, you realize that it was an opportunity for him to relive the glory of the past. But why do I call it the glory of the past? Is that you look at that rally, you look at people in attendance, you look at the bulk of the voting population now, you realize that there is a huge disconnect between them and the message that Baba was telling them. And if anything, this voting population now are people who are interested in the questions of bread and butter. How do they take care of, you know, the high cost of living? How do they ensure that they can take their children to school and such other things? So then what Azimio has done to them consistently is to keep reminding them of these glorious days when, say, we removed Moi from power, when we did this and that. But these people are not getting, for a moment, they don't feel that the Azimio is having a solution to their issues. Then secondly, you remember that, a bit of history to this, that one of the most effective chairmen of the Luo Council of Elders, Ker, was Riaga Ugalo. Riaga in the run-up to 2007 elections was able to hold very successful meetings between then the Luo community or Luo Council of Elders and the Kalenjin Council of Elders, when I think Arap Sei was the chairman. And what then happened is that by the time we were getting to 2007, there was a solid cohesion between these two communities, and when ODM was therefore birthed, that there was a seamlessness between these two people. Subsequently, we have attempted that. Remember, in the run-up to last year's elections, we attempted to do that between the Luo Council of Elders under the late chairman and the Kikuyu Council of Elders. but that was just so far we went. So these two events have been held or have taken place as an attempt of Raila Odinga to re-engineer himself. The question is, will he be successful? I want to start first with the local community because all politics are local.
Kidi, I'll ask you to pause there and we'll come back. All politics are local. I've noted where we are at because we need to take a break, but we will come back. I'll allow you to conclude your thought process, and then we'll hear from Wakili Bashir as well on his and on this particular subject.
Yo, Butros aka the Sharp God up in the mix. Now I'm saying NTV, shout out to you, bro. Keep it locked. Hey.
Sauti yako ina sound vizuri kwenye masikio.
I like it. Come to the dance floor, babe.
Angie.
Leo tuna festa fe banga. Festa fe banga. Another banga.
It's just like an amazing mix.
I am happy today.
Sing for my victory, nani there? Oh yeah. Inaweka shida chini na tupa mikono juu. Banjuka juu.
No compromise, this the hottest combo.
Unistima, uninare. On NTV, don't touch that dial. Not yet. No, what?
I come from a family of 5 children, and I'm the last born in terms of boys. And I have 2 sisters who come after me. Just seeing them having to go through their period time without a pad. And so they had to resort to other means of finding pads or, of just surviving that phase. The pad center is a very special place for many young girls and women because we are the first pad center, I dare say, that any woman, regardless of your creed, your social status, or where you come from, can walk into a pad center and you'll be given a pad for free with no questions asked. And secondly, I've met a number of women who, in one way or the other, just because of a pad, they've been robbed of their dignity, and it has led to a lot of shame. Some of them in school, we know that there are girls who are staying away from school because a few weeks or a few days before they experience their periods, they'll stay away because they are avoiding accidents. And accident means that it can start without them having a pad or without them knowing.
Own your dream home for as low as 1.98 million Kenya shillings in Vipingo Kilifi. SMS Vipingo to 22365 or call us today on 0740 400 215. Terms and conditions apply.
The National Assembly and the Senate are set to lock horns again in what is clearly an open and deliberate fomenting of a legal crisis. Both houses have published 2 parallel bills touching on the same matter, whose resultant effect will be each house rejecting the other's bill, hence creating a standoff, as Duncan Hemba reports.
Supremacy wars that rocked Parliament since the return of the bicameral legislature in 2013 have sprouted yet again. The twin houses have published twin conflicting bills, with each asserting its legislative muscle over the other, fully alive to the fact that both proposed pieces of legislation will land on the floor of the other and yield expected outcome: rejection. The two bills are the County Government's Revenue Raising Process Bill and the Equalization Fund Administration Bill. With regard to the County Government's Revenue Raising Process Bill 2013, published by National Assembly Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah in March 2023, it contains a proposal of law seeking to control haphazard county taxation by having the National Treasury control or block exorbitant levies that unreasonably prejudices national economic policies, cross-county economic activities, or national mobility of goods, services, capital, or labor. The bill is seeking to have the national government determine how counties impose taxes, issue waivers, and tax exemptions. However, in May 2023, Senate Majority Leader Aaron Cheriot published a similar bill that sharply differs with that of the National Assembly. The conflict is on Clause 4 of the bills. National Assembly is proposing that where county government intends to impose a tax, fee, or charge, the County Executive of Finance shall, 10 months before the commencement of the financial year, submit particulars of the proposal to the National Treasury and the Commission on Revenue Allocation. On its part, Clause 4 of the Senate bill is proposing establishment of a 5-member committee known as Interagency Committee on County Taxes and Charges, a team which shall comprise of one person, each working and nominated by the National Treasury, the Commission on Revenue Allocation, Council of County Governments, and the Kenya Revenue Authority. Insiders in the Senate are accusing the National Assembly of colluding with the national government to suppress counties. Concerning the bill on Equalization Fund, the two houses have published bills that differ on the establishment of the advisory board. Whereas the National Assembly bill published by Tiaty Member of Parliament William Kamket proposes that a chairperson of the board shall be appointed by the President with approval of the National Assembly, Senate Chairperson of the Finance Committee Ali Roberts' bill proposes that the board chair shall be appointed by Treasury Cabinet Secretary and shall include, among others, one person from a pastoralist community nominated by the National Assembly, one person nominated by the Senate, one person nominated by the Council of Governors drawn from areas identified as marginalized by the Commission on Revenue Allocation. National Assembly bill proposes 4 persons appointed by the Cabinet Secretary for the time being, responsible for the National Treasury to represent marginalized communities. With the two houses sticking to their guns, the two conflicting bills are candidates for the mediation committee, and should they fail to strike a consensus, then the court will be the final arbiter. Duncan Haemba, NTV.
Okay, and parliamentary business is something that we'll be discussing in the course of the next hour or so. But Kidi Mwaga, we left off at all politics is local.
Yes. Yes, so all politics are local. And therefore you realize that when it comes to the local community, these are people who have sought presidency from 1965. And therefore part of the massive solidarity they have demonstrated over time in standing with one of their own has been in an attempt to capture that presidency. But then when it got to the elections of last year, it was an anticlimax to that process when they felt that they had given their all, but they had nothing to show for it. I will tell you, Olive, and I'm saying this with a lot of, very cautiously, that Luo Nyanza has got a lot of unmarked graves that we have accumulated in the course of that pursuit of presidency. And so after 5 stabs, all of which have proved futile, there is a lot of restiveness in that backyard. And there are a lot of people who are feeling that after doing all this, the mere fact that we have not achieved any different results, even when we had a sitting president, and quote unquote the deep state, a lot of people are rethinking the next course of action. The second thing is that over time, yesterday, ODM has released an internal report where they are taking stock of how they conducted last year's elections. And ODM, in its infinite wisdom or lack of it, is saying that the MUMA-led team, National Elections Board, remember it was first a task force.
Yes.
And eventually they became the board that conducted the primaries. That it did such a shoddy work. Their work was shoddier than what was done by Judy Pareno in 2017, and worse than what was done by the former Bureti MP. What was his name? State House Franklin Bett, Chairman Bett. So actually, so what ODM is saying in not so many words, that it would be better off if they maintained Justice Richard Otieno Kwach as chairman of the board, because possibly Kwach did a better job. So all these things put together, when people think that their voices is curtailed in managing their own affairs, in electing their own people, then they are likely to revolt. And as Thomas Jefferson says, that a little rebellion here and there is a good thing. Right. So there may be a little rebellion in Luo Nyanza in coming days.
Okay,
but I could be wrong.
The article, what you're talking about, the audit, ODM audit, and I'm seeing John Buddy was quoted as stating, after 2017, we discovered that there were messes and we constituted a task force. Recommendations of that task force were given to the same chair to implement. Her tenure was worse than that of Pareno. And this particular article penned by Moses Nyamuri, ODM internal audit exposes manipulation in primary elections.
People voices to determine who becomes their MP, their MCA, their governor is increasingly curtailed by the cartel that has taken the party hostage.
All right. Yes. And we'll get more into this. But first, Wakili Bashir, just on the subject of President William Ruto making inroads in Nyanza, how the finance bill vote went, and we'll get into more detail on that. But is it evidence of Raila Odinga losing grip, or perhaps his tactics being outdated?
Thank you so much. I think on my part, when I look at the inroads that are being made by the president within certain turfs that we might describe as Luo Nyanza, for me, I will not wish Raila Odinga away easily. He's someone who has been in this politics for so long. And the only way that you can get rid of Raila is for the president and his team to undertake their mandate properly. If they end up ensuring that the certain dreams that they have sold the people is met, if they assure us that the roads they talked about, the job opportunities they talked about, whatever, all the goodies they talked about is what they dangle to Kenyans. If they do that, Raila will be gone. But now, look at it on the flip side. Is the government achieving anything? Has it achieved anything for the past 8 months? Not at all. For as long as that is the case, I do not think Raila Odinga will become a history. He will always be so relevant to us.
Okay.
What we are seeing, just look at the front page of the Daily Nation today. It is grim. You know, the situation is horrific. It's talking about youth who are even about to commit suicide just because they miss out on lotteries in the name of going to the US to seek for opportunities. We have a system or a government that is telling us, you're a graduate, but we'll give you jobs when we are building houses in what is called low-cost housing units that will be constructed. I'm a degree holder, I'm a master's holder. I'm not a mason. You know, I think the government is losing on every front on whatever it promised the people. For as long as that is the case, you cannot wake up one morning and tell us Raila's a gone history. That would be really, really difficult. The only way for him to edge him out of the memories of the people of Kenya is for the president to do what? To ensure that he lives up to the dreams of the people. Which dreams? There is a manifesto he shared with us towards the election. There are a lot of promises that were sold to the youth. Has that happened? Not even an inch. Nothing has happened. Today is a Monday morning. Ask the ordinary Kenyan who is not driving how much they're being charged whenever they take a matatu. I'm an advocate of the High Court. I'm an officer of the Courts of Law. I'm disappointed. A court of law in petition E181 has issued conservatory orders asking the government not to implement the dictates in the finance law, the new one. Has that been done? No. So for me, I'm looking at a government that the best it's doing at the moment is to maybe trample upon the constitutional values and principles and actually not undertake or accomplish one dream, not just one of all the dreams that the people, and especially the youth, that particular constituent that we all belong to largely here, is the youth bracket. I do not think there is anything good we can talk about today for them. So for as long as that is the case, the opposition will be relevant, Raila Odinga will be relevant, and any other person who would want to critique the government will be relevant.
All right. Speaking of relevant, Omulo, there's something Kidi said which echoed something I read yesterday in that particular article penned by Macharia Gaivo. And this is what he said. Raila gave, and this is at Kamkunji, Raila gave a long history of Sabasaba, concluding that the spirit which forced strongman Moi to give way should have no trouble sweeping William Ruto away. While there is certainly plenty of public discontent to exploit on the back of Ruto's failed election promise of immediate relief on cost of living, Raila might have neglected to factor in the fact that the bulk of his audience might have no Sabasaba memories to rekindle. July the 7th, 1990 will be 33 years ago to the day come Sabasaba 2023. A quick review of video footage from last Tuesday's Kamkunji showed that a clear majority of those in attendance were young men and a few women in their late teens and at best early 20s. They were not yet born at the original Sabasaba and therefore would have nothing to resonate with that date. Even those in their 40s present last week would in 1990 have been below mid-teen and with very little recollection of the momentous events and their significance. Is Raila a man stuck in history?
I think that is true because, and I have to support that statement because, you know, Sabasaba is a historically significant event that happened in 1990s, and if you look at what happened in those days, is totally different from you know, this time because we are in a different age. In 1990, actually, you know, though there were progressive, you know, nationalists fighting for a cause, national cause. For democracy, because by that time there was a one-party state and also uprising in Africa and even different you know, region in the world. So at that time there was an agitation to promote democracy, but as it were today, you know, things are different. Those who were born in 1990 cannot even remember what happened in those days. They don't remember, even though they are, you know, their gains made from Sabasaba and they are enjoying the fruits of democracy. They cannot remember those who fought for Sabasaba or fought for democracy. You know, Matiba and Charles Rubia and even Orengo, those days, you know, they were very, very serious and they knew what they were fighting for. But today, you see, Azimio people promised a lot of things. To start with, they said that they're going to remove Ruto from office in the State House. Kenyans came out, they went to the streets. We don't know where that State House is. They do not even remove anybody from anywhere. Then secondly, they came up with demands from the cost of living, from opening of the server. There were certain demands that they said they must be implemented. At the end of the day, Kenyans went to the street. Nothing happened. They have already come out of that talk. They no longer want to associate themselves with the bipartisan talks. So it means that they are doing the same thing, no changes in tactics. It is same history. They want to talk about history. I think Raila should just fire some of his members in Azimio, somebody like minority leader, chief whip. And he should at least give the leadership role to a young person who can now resonate well with this generation, who can understand the dynamics of politics at this age and at this era. But if he continues to practice and to discuss or tell Kenyans about history, Sabasaba, and all other stories about you know, what happened in those days, I think Kenyans will not take him seriously because if you look at, you know, the Constitution allows for procession, it allows for protest, but Kenyans, if you look when Raila talks about protests or maandamano, you know, Kenyans start talking about tear gas. What kind of tear gas police are going to use? How are they going to battle with the police? It is not structured. They are not, you know, they are not organized, and it is not a real thing. So it is a joke, and we can say that this is lack of leadership, lack of vision, lack of strategy, and they should change their tactics because working with Ruto at this age, Ruto is a young man And if you look at the leadership of Kenya Kwanza, people like Ichungwa, people like Ndini Nyoro, people like Osoro, these are young people. They have new tactics. And they have, you know, look at Raila, they have studied him. They know how he dances, they know what he does. They have studied everything. So there's nothing that is going to scare Kenya Kwanza. And I think we should leave Kenyans alone. Currently they are suffering. We should not take advantage of them. So Azimio should just think they should go back to the drawing board, but not use Kenyans suffering as a yardstick, you know, to do politics at this current age.
All right. Jim, Omulo says they have studied him. and it reminds me of something that was in the weekend review yesterday on The Standard. And Kenya Kwanza, so I'm just going to read out what it states. Kenya Kwanza MPs have, meanwhile, dismissed Raila's call for civil disobedience as, quote, mere threats from Azimio that we are used to.
So I will be very careful to write off threats. Whatever threats they are, you don't write them off. And here's the reason. When you think about in 1963, we got Madaraka. In 1964, we became a Jamhuri. These are events in history. But every year, we spend millions of shillings to celebrate these events, to remind ourselves of these events. Why don't we forget about them? How comes Jamhuri and Madaraka are so important that these ones we have to remember? In fact, we have to have national days to remember these days, to remember our forefathers who went to the bush, who came out and fought the Mzungu and actually won us liberation. Those are important. That was an act of civil disobedience. They were considered such unruly human beings for even daring to think that they could take the reins of power from the white man and hand it back to the black people. And so to date, we are a free nation. We have free press and everything because of what they did. And so to take Sabasaba and say that it is just an event that happened in the 90s, and so Raila should stop telling us stories, those who don't learn from their history, those who don't even know their history, will most likely tend to repeat the things that they did in that history. If you look at a lot of events that have happened across, even if you look at what's happening in France, it's just people who decided that history was not important and that we can live the way we want. And that's why we don't do political education today. So you have kids growing up who have absolutely no interest in politics because they have been told politics is a dirty game and it is a bad thing. Yeah, a young person, anyone who was between 18 to 35 during Sabasaba, today is between 51 to 68 years old. So they are old men, old women. But they started that march when they were at that critical age of 18 to 35. And because of what they did, we are here today. And so if Raila Odinga and any other good-willing Kenyans, the problem is sometimes we take national issues and put them on Raila Odinga, are calling, because Omulo says Kenyans are suffering, but he says leave them alone. So we are suffering, but leave us alone. Somebody has to actually marshal us. Somebody has to instigate us. Somebody has to remind us, cause us to be so angry at a government that is perpetually doing everything it possibly can. If you look at the finance bill, it is doing everything it possibly can to cause as much suffering as possible to as many Kenyans as possible. And so if you're telling us that someone asking us to take up, to go out on the streets and demand better, because whether he voted for Ruto or not, he must serve me. And if he's not serving me, he has two options, either shape up or ship out. And the people, according to this constitution that we gave ourselves, sometimes we don't understand the constitution that we gave ourselves. We gave ourselves a constitution that gave all power back to the people. And if someone is trying to educate us, and then you have folks who are saying, forget that's just mere threats. That's a way of zombifying you and making you so dumb. Making Kenyans so dumb that we are not able to read the constitution for ourselves and see that, by the way, we are not helpless. In the face of this Kenya Kwanza government, a lot of us feel helpless. A lot of us feel like there's absolutely nothing we can do about this regime. But someone is reminding us to look at the constitution. You're not helpless. There's something you can do about it. So I think that while Raila has done this time and again, it has worked in the past. If done right, it can work again.
Okay. Kidi Mwaga, speaking of the electorate, and I'm looking at this particular article by Oscar Obonyo, yes. And he says there is a crop of politicians who feel the former premier has stood with the ordinary Kenyans for far too long. A duty they regard as thankless because not all have rewarded him at the presidential ballot and now want him to step back and let the electorate experience the consequences of their choice.
Well, before I respond to that, I must thank my brother Omulo for making my brother Jimmy come alive. We clearly need...
When he said shape up or shape out of
we clearly need young people who have come alive like Jim in India. There is an attempt, especially by those who are within the Azimio rank and file, to castigate the government's proposal to embark on a massive affordable housing program. And they are saying that it demonstrates lack of creativity when the government is saying that the only job available would be in the housing sector. One thing our friends are forgetting, that one, this affordable housing program was proposed by both sides of the political divide. If anything, the Azimio team was proposing 1.5%. So up to that extent, there is no contestation. The next thing is that after the 10 years of the Uhuru legacy, truth is that we have made a certain economic decisions that are now coming back to haunt us. And as a result, the government must find means and ways on how to spur liquidity in the economy. Part of the modest through the government can spur liquidity in the economy is through a massive program like the affordable housing. And so my brother knows that there are a lot of stuff that lawyers do when it comes to housing. There is the leases, there is, so I don't think what he was saying, I don't think he was being entirely truthful when he said that as a master's holder and an officer of the court, and him not being a Mason, that he will not be a beneficiary of such a program. As professionals, possibly who have advantage of coming on these programs, we must tell our people the truth, because some of us must resist the temptation to, play ball to the political stimuli of the moment. Secondly, I must also remind Jimmy India that history, as John Beko would say, is more than the path left by the past. That it influences the present and can shape the future. And that history, being more than the path left by the past, is that today in 2023, when all a political formation can bring to the people is the history of the past and nothing else. What then it does is that it makes the people imagine that they are powerless, and that unless they have got this political demigod at the center, that is when they can resolve their issues. As a society, I think that Kenyans are very much in control of their lives, and it does not require any one man or one woman to be on the streets for us to be able to resolve our issues. If anything, look at how the Azimio handled the last series of demos. One, there was a question of high cost of living, which made a lot of young people come to the streets thinking that solutions could come through those demos. As we are all seated here, we can bear witness that there is absolutely no solution, especially in regards to high cost of living, that Azimio presented or that came as a result of those demos. If anything, they mischievously attempted to use those demos to relitigate the question of election to the office of the president. I am of the view that Raila Odinga should not leave the political space. If anything, I don't think that people who are demanding that Raila should leave the space, I don't think they're being fair. Because Raila, as a Kenyan, has got the right to be in that space. However, when he does not read the signs of the moment, the needs of the people of the moment, then I think naturally history will relegate him to the periphery. And that would be a very sad ending for Baba. So I think that as someone who loves Baba, of course, I think that it is incumbent upon Baba and Azimio to be more creative in the ways in which they are engaging the people. For instance, we had the voting in the House, and you see how dismal the performance of the Azimio team was. So I think that those are my remarks at this point in time.
All right, because I sent you a wink telling you we're going to get into the finance bill on the other side of this break. Wakili, I will give you occasion to respond to what Kidimwaga, Jim, and Omulo have had to say. We take a break. We come back with AM Live on the other side.
Nunua KPLC tokens, Bela charges. Only on Airtel Money. Dial *334#. Select Lipa na Airtel Pay Bill, then select KPLC.
My shirt, a toss of lavender and a world of freshness.
Wash your clothes with Toss Lavender to leave your clothes with a lasting, irresistible freshness.
Do not hold back in any situation. Eno gets to work on the 6 symptoms of heartburn fast.
You do know you said all of that out loud, right?
If symptoms persist, seek medical advice.
Safaricom Business is enabling organizations to connect, protect, enable, and transform their businesses by leveraging technology and innovation.
Through technology, we've been able to communicate, keep records, store our data, reach our customers, run our logistics. The future for both Space and Style and Safaricom looks quite promising. We are now looking to go into, digital selling to expand and improve our services and also ensure that our factory and manufacturing processes are actually quite sustainable.
Secure Fiber offers your business a fast, dependable and secure fiber internet connection. Visit www.business.safaricom.co.ke to explore our range of plans tailored to meet your business needs.
From now on, Officer Polo will take over. What are you doing? You will compromise this.
Situ kange naitwa Jemo.
Mimi ni TJ.
Wewe, ukarage huo mtiaji huyo.
Madam, leta pesa, usiniletee kisirani.
Siwezi kupea.
Ni nini? Niambia mzae tamletea do yake.
Maze mimi sina no, I come in peace, brother.
How do you keep your toilet clean?
I use normal detergent and bleach for washing.
The detergent and bleach cleanless can leave behind yellowness, rust, and germs. Harpic's 10 times better cleaning compared to regular detergents and bleach, and kills 99.9% illness-causing germs in your toilet, including the COVID-19 virus.
Own your dream home for as low as 1.98 million Kenya shillings in Vipingo Kilifi. SMS Vipingo to 22365 or call us today on 0740 400 215. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, welcome back to AM Live, and I did promise to give Wakili first bite of, first bite of the what? Apple cherry? Yeah, but just your response to what has been submitted by Omulo, Jim, and Kidimwaga.
I think I will say this. We need to understand one thing. There is no any obligation on the former Prime Minister to salvage the situation Kenyans are finding themselves in. For him, he can spend 10 days calling on the people for mass action. It's up to him. He can go sleep, he can go travel. There is no obligation bestowed upon him. The obligation rests on the government that we're having at the moment. The best the opposition is supposed to do is to cast checks, have certain checks and balances upon the government to ensure that the government is not going wrong. How is that done? That will be done on the floors of our parliament. To that extent, that is how he might help us. On the other side, you will see Kenyans telling us, Baba hatusaidi, ama haleti idea nzuri. That is not up to him. That is up to the system that we are now having in place. You see, the government has the majority, it has the numbers, it has good, energetic young men and women who are sitting on those mantles of leaderships. I think it's really important to give them the opportunity. That's firstly. Secondly, I've observed Baba for a while. He makes one mistake. Whenever he calls for barazas and rallies, he will make a lot of sense to Kenyans for as long as he's talking about the high cost of living, the huge number of unemployed youth and what have you. But the moment he starts talking about reopening the servers and the question of kuibiwa kura, that is where he loses the point. That is one issue that he needs to actually stay away from at the moment. For now, the best he should do is let him show us the weaknesses and the problems that this government is actually imposing Kenyans more and more. The question of now revisiting past electoral injustices, what he considers as, is not important to the people for now. Thirdly, there's one issue, again, I think the present crop of his audience have appreciated about Mr. Raila Odinga. One time, especially the last part of President Uhuru Kenyatta's regime, we ended up having a mongrel of the opposition and the government together. So that is where I think he also lost the point of being a good opposition leader. The moment he found himself in what was regarded as the handshake moment, that is what he has actually, that is where he has lost a certain chunk of his audience. I think this particular moment gives him a chance. What chance is it giving him? This government is making so many mistakes. It is not living up to the dreams and the promises that it has made for the people of Kenya. At the moment, what he should do, let him keep critiquing the government, whether he wants to call for mass action, whatever it is. And I think on the part of the government, there are two obligations. Whenever he calls for mass action, let the government provide him with security. Let the police be told it is not the moment to even attack the protesters and demonstrators. On the other hand, the government of the day is also a bit losing something on this. Our country is just done with an election the other day. I think in August is when we had our ballot, that's when we had our general election last year. 8 months down the line, roughly, we are having now a continuous political issue whereby we are told now the president is focusing on eating into the votes or the baskets of the former prime minister and those in the opposition. So the big question is, if he starts campaigning right now, if he starts going for political rallies, if he starts doing homecoming ceremonies and telling the people, I've given you this person, come the next election, you need to consider me, at what point is he going to deliver to the people? I think this continuous issue of us always being in politics also has to rest at some point. At least he should try and give us a scenario whereby up until a year to the next general election, he should focus on at least delivering to the people. Thirdly, the people of Nyanza are just like the people of Nairobi and the people of the Rift Valley. Continuous developments should always be given to them. It is not about the opposition party that they have voted for or where they come from. It is about an obligation that is on the president across the country and all over the 47 counties. And I think once we understand that, the president will get an opportunity and he'll be able to deliver to the people. The opposition, on the other hand, will be in a position to critique the government, to take its time to maybe talk about all the ills and the social ills that are associated with this particular regime. So let us demarcate the two. The opposition has its way. It may be able to undertake certain checks. On the other hand, it has a lot of time to waste. They can waste as much time as possible, but there is time running on the part of the government. The government must not waste so much time responding to what Honorable Raila Odinga says. It is wasting time. That is what has happened to the first regime of President Uhuru when he came into office. Raila Odinga will not tire. He is so good at this. And there is no obligation on him. I'm not asking him to build for me stadia or even create more jobs for the youth. The obligation is on this government. And let me tell you, if he continues this way, this government is not looking like it's going to deliver because it's spending more time responding to him and time is running on that. Right. Finally, he should also ensure one thing. In the event he's maybe invited to any side of a government, let him not make the mistake he made during the handshake moment. That will kill him totally. But to the extent he talks about cost of living, unemployment, the question of slums, the question of bad climate, the question of people whose cost of living going up and up, he will make so much sense to them. Let him also, for now, for the next 3 years, stay away from telling us about kura zimeibiwa, we need to reopen the servers. That is not something good for us at the moment.
Right.
At the moment, for him to be able to endear himself to the youth, there are so many other good things that he can focus on that will show us the weaknesses of this government. And I think for me, for the last 8 months, I keep repeating this, there is nothing, not even one single thing that I've seen that was achieved by this regime. So it has time, it has about 4 years to come. Let it do what it has promised the people. We all have the manifesto that was launched, so many good things about it. We have the budget that was read the other day, so many good things about it. And I think we need to see the fruits of what we are looking for from this regime. It was a government full of energy, full of promises. The president has the time to deliver. Let him stop politicking.
Okay. Omulo,
the spokesman for the government is here.
Liona sura yake ilibadilika. The first time you said it, he laughed, but this time he's not laughing. And Omulo, as you respond to that, you talked about he needs to steer clear of, talking about open the server and the election was stolen, etc. This Oscar Bonyo's piece yesterday quoted Kimani Ichung'wah saying his belief that Uhuru can still take him and Azimio to the, quote, proverbial Canaan after failing to deliver the win he had promised and assured him of is, to say the least, one of his major undoings. Your thoughts?
Permit me first to respond to some of the issues raised by my brother Jim India. And I don't want to be misquoted. I didn't say that Kenyans are suffering and they should just relax. We have to be aware and true to the fact that change is stubborn. And sometimes when Ruto has taken this radical path to bite the bullet and change how the economy is run, he found this Kenya in ICU. And when you are sick, because I want to put this in context so that a normal Kenyan can understand. When you are sick, you must accept the fact that you have to suffer for some few minutes or some few hours to recover. When you are injected, you feel the pain, even when you are taking drugs. But after that, you recover and you become a normal person. That is what we are going through right now. That is the process. That's why we have to raise revenue. That's why we have to pay this, to look for taxes, so that we can, offer services. Again, Raila is a leader in this country and we respect him. He fought for democracy. He has really helped Kenyans in so many ways. But it is high time they change tactics. We want them to be innovative so that they can change from having disruptive demonstration to having productive demonstrations. Demonstrations is allowed in the Constitution, and that is a fact. But they have to change the tactics so that Kenyans can have a productive demonstration. What is there is running battle with the police, causing havoc. Those are some things that we want to come away from. And that is why what we want to urge opposition is that they have the right to provide checks and balances, but they need to have a productive process. It is easier to criticize the government, but I think as an advocate of the High Court, there's what they say, res ipsa loquitur. The facts speak for themselves. It means that it needs to be to be alive to the fact that there are a lot of things that have happened. Look at the finance bill. The only challenge with Azimio, they focus so much on housing levy. They made Kenyans to understand the only thing in that finance bill was only 1.5 or 3% of our housing levy. But they did not tell Kenyans other important things in this Finance Act and even the current budget. He's a student. Look at what the government has done or even proposed. Help from 15 billion to 30 billion. It is going to help so many people. 630 billion going to education, 141 billion. Look at good progress that all these proposals are meant to cushion a normal Kenyan, those who are suffering, the hustlers and mama boggers. They need to communicate to Kenyans the important side of the finance bill.
All right.
That is where they failed. So I think it is high time that the Azimio side needs to now hand over the mantle to young people who can think, who can be innovative, who can now wrestle with Ruto. Ruto is a young person who is focused and ruthless. And I think if they continue using the old tactics, it is very difficult to teach an old dog new tricks. And I think that is where I can leave it.
All right, what you're talking about youthful and ETC, Mark Bichachi was quoted yesterday as saying, and let me zoom in a little bit here, as saying, Azimio's biggest challenge is its dependence on Odinga. Following last year's poll debacle, he says many people have lost interest in the former premier and his political strategy. He's quoted as saying, for the current push to be impactful, Azimio must begin to form new alliances, embrace a youthful vibe and leadership, and expand the movement beyond Maandamano. And I want to take a look now at this particular piece here. And this is the Oscar Bonyo one in the weekly review. It says Azimio is reportedly in agreement over the need to cast its net wider in order to get more players on board and inject fresh thinking to develop a new strategy. But the Odinga factor remains a big headache. But players within the coalition are neither agreed nor do they know how best to push the former premier from the front bench. The situation is further complicated by the fact that Odinga is the most experienced political figure in the Azimio grouping with the largest political party and largest following. Quote here, it is a major fix for others. We need a new face for our campaign, yet we cannot elbow him from the center now because it could well backfire, observes an MP from Odinga's rural county of Siaya. Jim, your thoughts?
I mean, I think it is it tells a lot of us that we are depending on a man in his twilight years to offer any alternative kind of leadership in this country. A man who, truth be told, he's living his bonus years. I mean, we're grateful to God for the many years he's added unto him. But it says a lot about us that when things are not going right anywhere, the first person we ask is, why is Raila not speaking? Where is he? Because if you look at our demographics, you would assume that we would have a few vibrant young women and men somewhere. But Raila himself occupies a lot of space. He occupies too much space. Any of these guys, if you've been in his presence, you realize how much space he occupies. And because of how much space he occupies, because of his, the years, his experience and all that, as that member of parliament is saying, it's difficult to edge him out. But sometimes you have to do what he did. When he was sick and tired of the Ford issues that were going on, he wrestled with it out and had his own way. And sometimes I think that is what it would call for. It will call for a rebellion that is not a silent rebellion. It would have to be what, for instance, the Ochieng, the Ugenya member of parliament, has done, where he just went, formed MDD, ran for political office and won. It has to be the kind of rebellion which the Kisumu East member of parliament has done, where he didn't even bother to ask for the ODM ticket. He just went as an independent candidate and won. That has to be the kind of rebellion that has to happen, that these people have to dare to think outside of him. Because truth be told is, I know we don't like to categorize this country as either being left or right, but right now it feels like these Azimio guys are on the left side of things. And if they don't organize themselves, then we are seeing this baton being passed on between Ruto and Gachagua in the next 10 years or so. That is what will happen. Because they played around for so long in 2013 and in 2017, and the baton was passed on from Uhuru to Ruto. They're going to play around along again for a while.
But you think the deputy president and the president might stay together for a while?
But that's not the issue. That's not the issue. The issue is whether Ruto and Uhuru didn't stay together, and Ruto still got the baton.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter whether Gachagua stays or not.
Words, within 24 hours, a lot of politics can change.
A lot of politics can change, but that change has to be engineered. If Azimio don't engineer that change, then that change will be engineered from the other side of things. If you're not doing anything to cause change, then the other side are doing something to cause change. And you can already see how they're planning themselves. And so we will be in this state where we continually say that why does power only reside in 2 communities? Why does power only come from a certain side of this country? We will be there for a while. Why? Because truth be told, one, they have the numbers, they know how to marshal those numbers, they know how to organize those numbers. So the opposition side has to organize themselves. And that level of organization, for crying out loud, cannot come from Raila Odinga in his twilight years. It will not. It has proven it cannot. So could we try to reimagine the opposition away from Raila Odinga? Could that perhaps be the opportunity for even, and I will not even mention the likes of Kalonzo Musyoka and the rest of them, because they're fellas who have proven time and again that they cannot be counted on when it matters most, at least we've seen. But I think within those ranks, there are serious individuals. I will just fall short of calling them lest I am labeled as being whatever the main mix. But there are serious individuals within those ranks who I think are already reimagining it, and they need to do it. Because otherwise, those of us who prefer not to vote for this government will have no choice but to vote for it. Because if you look at the other side, you'll wonder, do I vote for Jakoya or do I vote for William Ruto? And when you don't have an alternative, then most of the times Kenyans vote with euphoria and you vote for the person who looks like they're going to win the next election. And that's how we end up where we are right now, where we are overtaxed and overburdened.
All right. And Kitty, my question to you would be this, and you had mentioned that internal audit. Is Raila unable to convert? You know, because he gets to... I don't know what it is. Like with this last election, literally this election, many people have hosted here, said this was his election to lose.
Yes.
Yeah, but is the problem, some of what I'll read out here, you talked about the internal audit, and an official who attended the meeting said some members were infuriated by the issuance of direct tickets to a majority of MPs who are defending their seats. The doling of direct tickets was also widespread in the Senate and governor race, especially in Nyanza and Western regions. Some members feel this could have disenfranchised some voters in the region. In the governor's race, it is only in Busia where the party conducted universal suffrage, with the rest of other candidates in Nyanza and Western getting direct tickets. In the Senate race, it is only in Kisumu where voters were allowed to pick their candidates. When we look at that analysis that was done by Roseline Obala yesterday, is it this one? Let me see if it's the one I have open. Yes. No. It should be this page here. It was by Roseline Obala and Samuel Owino. And some of what they talk about as having led to Azimio not marshalling enough votes where the finance bill is concerned is they feel, MPs they interviewed said, they feel that the leadership of the House was imposed on them, and I will find that particular paragraph. Sorry, we have a caller on the line. Shall we listen to them first, and then I'll have you respond to is. As much as Raila says he's the champion of democracy, Saba, he has gotten us here. Yes. Is he, in fact, not a Democrat? Okay, so let's listen to Peter Muturi. Peter Muturi, your thoughts?
Hi, Oli. Good morning.
Morning.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And you?
I'm all right, thank you.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Welcome back. We missed you.
Thank you.
Look, please, something about the panelists, eh?
Uh-huh.
My honorable panelist this morning.
Go ahead.
Yes, just a reminder. Just a reminder. Age is just a number. Age is just a number.
Okay.
In the U.S.,
the
president of the U.S. currently, President Biden,
yes,
is not a young man. There are many young Americans who could not go through the whatever, but Biden is the president, despite his age.
Mm-hmm. All right. Is that all, Peter?
No. Listen. The aspect that they are missing,
okay,
is the money aspect in our politics.
Okay.
If you cannot divorce that, the money aspect in our politics blurs everything.
In what way?
In that, the people who are elected in one party, when one party wins, you find many of them going to the winning party. Is it because they have changed their taxes, or is it because that's where the money is? So the money aspect in our politics cannot be divorced.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for calling in this morning. And Kidi, the panelists can weigh in on what, especially Jim. Jim, you're the one who's saying Raila is in his twilight, yes.
That is it.
Peter, you will respond to Peter. But Kidi,
yes,
there's that question I was saying again. Is Raila's undoing that he is in fact a closeted dictator?
Olive, I will tell you something about the nature of human beings. That we all have what is called personal contradictions. It is something I have mentioned here before. For instance, when I speak about personal contradictions, I like to refer to Thomas Jefferson, the first person to tell us about the Declaration of Independence, that we the people. But Thomas Jefferson was a slave owner. We come to Nelson Mandela, the father of the nation, who was unable to father his own family, his own children. And so those personal contradictions sometimes manifest themselves. But when it comes to Azimio and ODM, I would say that the biggest problem Azimio is facing is poor stakeholder management. Because you realize that today as you speak, and it is in part response to what Peter has said, you realize that, let's begin with young people. Out of every 5 young people who were with Azimio in last elections, 1 could be either in UDA now, the other 3 could be out there disillusioned, neither in Azimio nor in UDA nor in Kenya Kwanza, just trying to figure life on their own, and the one who could be left in Azimio right now must be very frustrated, because you realize that in that space in Azimio, the moment you express an opinion that is not in tandem with the official thinking of the powers that be, then you are deemed to be speaking for the other side. I will give you a personal experience. That sometime early this year, I said that I am one of the people who are not very enthusiastic about maandamano as a response to our civic challenges. So I said that the game plan, because around that time people like Olekina were calling for secession. They were saying that this marriage is too cruel. Something that David Ndii was saying in 2017 when he was around Baba. And I told them that this game plan is 5 years too late. You cannot reenact what had been enacted already. And trying to act that now you are going to bring any meaningful change. There was a lot of backlash then because people thought that now I was speaking for the president or some other master elsewhere. But I was telling them that, gentlemen, if this is how we are going to conduct our politics, we are going to lose the people, we are going to lose the respect, everything that can go wrong will certainly go wrong. Well, Azimio team decided and went ahead with the maandamano, which was within their constitutional rights, and they fervently quoted Article 37 of the Constitution, the right to picket, to demonstrate, and to do whatever. The question is, today, after they had done all that, a few lives were lost, the properties were destroyed, what was the results? The results is, we have people like Eugene Wamalwa telling us that now we should walk out of the bipartisan talks. So that if they are unwilling to accommodate people who are willing to tell them the truth, I will tell Jimmy India that let him prepare for William Ruto's second term, if that is how they are going to conduct their politics.
All right.
Yes.
And your thoughts on what I asked about dictatorship. And in this particular article by Roselyn Obala, and I keep forgetting the second name, Roselyn Obala and Samuel Owino. I will not forget Sam, my apologies. But this is a quote of an ODM MP speaking in confidence. We have raised the issue with the party. with the party leadership, since we don't get an opportunity to give our views.
Yes.
He disregards members' opinions, and whenever you miss rallies or a meeting, he sends show cause letters, and this is with regard to Sifuna, without inquiring why the members were absent. On the question of the finance bill, they said things are very slow to move in the House because people are waiting for word from Raila Odinga.
Yes. Wakili, maybe before Wakili comes in, it still goes back to poor stakeholder management, because you realize that the people who are holding leadership positions feel that they are more answerable to Baba than to the members, so that instead of treating members with respect, they think that members can be chaperoned around like children, and the only person to be consulted is Baba. I think something that they must change. Thank you.
All right. Wakili?
Yeah, you see, one of the things that I have noticed also is that if Raila Odinga had a good number of members of parliament who are on his side, there's a way he would have corrected the government in a very orderly way. The reason as to why he's taking us back to public barazas, it's because he is losing the grip on the number of MPs that are with the opposition. Actually, the number is growing so lean. To an extent, I think with time, we will be surprised to have a very little number forming as the actual practical opposition members of parliament. And I think that is a worrisome issue. Because when you see that kind of a story whereby we are told there is quite of being bullish, control within the parliament, within the party, I think that will end up making the members be disinterested in being in that particular party. The only way to keep your members together is for you to be a bit accommodative, be open to divergent views and opinions. There was a research that was done by TIFA. The survey report by TIFA last year talked about 53% of those who participated in that poll were asked, do you think a person who is within the opposition should work with the Kenya Kwanza government? 53% of the Kenyans who participated in that particular poll actually were so much of the opinion that yes, even if you're in the opposition, you should work with the Kenya Kwanza government so that you're able to pull developments for your people. That tells you. And then the other question the poll asked was, do you think if these particular people resign from the party and we go for a by-election, might some of those who are elected on ODM be re-elected through the Kenya Kwanza party, coalition, or any of the parties within that particular coalition? Majority of I think the Kenyans who participated in that poll again said yes, a good number might be re-elected on the basis of that. Where does that place us? It places us to a scenario whereby the opposition might suffer a lot. What in the US they mostly call party switching, or what in the Philippines they call party tankotism or political tankotism, whereby you elect someone and the person leaves your party, doesn't resign formally, but ends up working with the ruling regime. Recently, actually in April, the North Carolina state in the US, the state representative left the the Democrats for the Republicans. It is an issue happening across the world whereby all you're interested in is to see how can I work with this particular regime so that I'm able to pull more developments for my people. It is happening across all the places. I think recently the Ukrainian government is trying to think of what is called the anti-defection laws. They are trying to think of what bill can we pass in our parliament to limit these people who are running away from the party they were elected in, who are trying to work with the other party. And exactly what is happening in ODM will end up causing more people to leave that party, not formally, but practically, but end up working with the Kenya Kwanza government for so many reasons. You will not want to stay in a place that is engulfed in a lot of heat, where you're not respected, where you're not consulted, where you are about to be controlled and even and you're forced to even participate in a rally somewhere. So with time, if they don't reorganize what they are doing, they might end up losing the track of how they're handling things. And let me remind you this. Look at Article 95 of the Constitution. Article 95 of the Constitution, when you read it, it even says our members of parliament shall, from time to time, they can review the conduct of the president, the deputy president, and all the other state office holders. That tells you they can even remove them. It's so much crucial, I think, for the former premier to really consolidate those who were elected on the on the opposition parties. It is really important for him. That is how he'll be able to also influence what is happening in the country more, because a lot happens within that house. Okay. But I think, unfortunately, of late, what we can see members, when the budget is being read, they're walking out. When the finance bill is being passed, they're walking out. I think there's a better way of handling the affairs of the opposition members and the parties that will be quite influential, more influential than even the street smart politics we're talking about. So it's really important for him to reorganize his affairs. It's an issue. It's happening across the world. It's happening in Uganda, actually. It's happening in India. Anti-defection laws have been drafted, but people are finding a way of working with the current regime. Okay. So with time, it's a more unseen issue, but ODM might become a party with few MPs from Nyanza, and the rest and the other members who are coming from the other regions might find their ways around, ways of working around with the Kenya Kwanza government. All right. And so I want us to conclude with a minute each answering that question of, can the center hold where Azimio is concerned? But there was an MP who was willing to go on record, Kibagendi, who said, what we lack is vibrancy. We are dependent on the party leader. We should not wait for too long until we get direction from the party leader. Yet we address our concerns through caucuses and the parliamentary group leadership. Mulu, where Azimio is concerned, can the center hold? The center cannot hold when the pillars are weak, and the pillars are not allowed to criticize or share ideas, new ideas that can help propel the party or the movement to another level. What we are experiencing is, the moment Raila will allow or mentor a young person or allow them to come up with new ideas without questioning the position of a party leader, then that is the moment Azimio or ODM will win this election in this country. What I don't want is that to this extent where members of parliament or members of Azimio are pushing Raila to the extent where they want him to be a gorilla warlord. Raila is a statesman. Yes. We don't want Raila to be like Besigye. These are the people who are practicing different tactics. Raila should maintain his pace, and I think he should even rest and allow young people to take over. All right. Lastly, you only had a minute. Lastly, it should be remembered that the moment you interfere with local politics, the moment you want to dictate and micromanage everybody, even the issues of CIA, a person or a deputy governor just raising issues, you want to go to the extent of talking to MCAs to micromanage a county, then you are a serious dictator and you should not be a leader in this country. Jim, a minute?
I think the center cannot and will not hold because Raila was the center, and he has suffered too many wounds for him to hold anymore. He has suffered, from the Supreme Court laws. He told us to boycott products, which has not worked. March to State House, which did not work. He has threatened to expel members, which has not worked. He has secession calls, has not worked. ICC, whistleblowers. He has brought everything that he could. He has thrown everything at this. It has not worked. And it is time for us to be frank with our people and brutally honest. It is painful, but we better start now so that we go through all the processes of grief. So that before 2027, we have come to terms with the fact that the center cannot hold, is not holding, and we need a new center. All right. Kidimwaga, why are you laughing?
Well, my brother, when he opens his heart, you clearly see how much pain he is going through. My brother Hill. I'm going through the stages. Olive, the center in Azimio cannot hold when you have got poor housekeeping manners, when the stakeholder management is in shambles, when people are not given a chance to thrive as members of a political party, when you think that intimidation and threats are the only tools available to, with which to engage members. So I think that Azimio and ODM may have to rethink their strategy, that they may have to have more bonding sessions and make people feel that they can express their voices within those parties. If that does not happen, they are going to, number one, lose the young people within their rank and file, the ones that have left because they have lost a huge chunk already. The few ones who are left are people who, so yeah, the center cannot hold. All right, finally, Wakili.
I think when you look at what is happening in ODM, this particular rift that we can see at the moment is also being taken advantage of by the Kenya Kwanza regime because they are getting more and more members on this side. But the bigger risk is we will have a house with a very weak opposition, an actual opposition whereby only few numbers will be against the ruling regime, and that will send a very dangerous trajectory for our country because we need a robust opposition within the houses of parliament. So I think what we can see, the rift within ODM will have a ripple effect on what is happening on the floors of the houses, whereby our people will not be able to get good laws. Finally, let me take advantage of this. I saw a story that was run that talked about the twin bills that were before the two houses. This has happened before in the 13th Parliament, whereby the Senate and National Assembly have clashed on that. It happens ordinarily, but what mostly happens is both speakers form what is called a mediation committee. And that particular mediation committee sits down to age it, and it will be comprised of members from the National Assembly and members from the Senate. It is not a big problem, but it happens a lot. It comes up. So it is coming up in this particular house. It is an issue that can be handled, and I think the mediation committee that will be formed by the two speakers will be able to age out the differences, and that's how that will be resolved. I was a bit interested in that because I served in, I worked in National Assembly, and that's how we were able to handle it before. Not as a member, but in other
in another capacity. All right, then Jerry says they're trying to solve their own problem of not paying tax to the government, not the local Mwananchi, and that is in response to the post we put up about the center holding. Nate Sang says, unlike the battles before, fighting Ruto's government won't have any impact. And this is Monsieur Mandere, who says Raila's greed and poor planning have always been his downfall. He never listens. Your troops are there to defend you, but also give you much needed advice since you can't be on the ground all the time. Raila feels larger than life. And Mukiri Matigari says Raila has taken too long in the game. He will not leave the political arena on his own terms. All right, those are just some of the views that you've shared on social media. My name is Olive Burrows. Allow me to thank my panelists this morning, Suleiman Bashir, Kidi Mwaga, Jim India, Omulo Jr. I look forward to continuing this conversation on another day. Coming up is Your World.